This is my 2003 Toyota MR2 Spyder, and if you read the description, you know I'm having a problem with the speaker. I didn't decide to do this video until I was part of the way through. In fact, I've already repaired this side, but I'm going to take you from start to finish by doing the other side. There's already a video online about how to do this in this car, but I think the guy missed a few things, and I wanted to go a little further than he did, like start a little earlier with the diagnosis, and so I decided to do my own video here. So the problem that I was having was that the left speaker pair was not working. It worked, then it didn't work. Sometimes when I was driving, it would suddenly come on, and I said, hey, that's much better, you know, and then it would eventually just stopped altogether. And I honestly didn't think that it was the speakers. This head unit is a JVC. I have not had good luck with JVC head units. I did put it in, and I don't remember why. Probably just the right thing at the right time or something, but I just assumed immediately that it was the head unit that was the problem. I've had speakers go bad before, and when they go bad, usually it sounds really bad, like a squirrel is being eaten by whatever eats squirrels. And so I didn't think that was the problem. I thought it was either the head unit or the wiring in between had some kind of loose connection or something. So there are only three parts. This is not a stock system, but it's laid out in the stock way. So meaning there are really only three parts: the head unit, the speakers, and the wiring in between. So I decided to start the diagnosis process with the free stuff, what I call free stuff. Stuff that doesn't require you to do a lot of work, removing panels, things that don't cost you money. So the first and most obvious, and I think what you should do, is essentially play with the settings on the radio. Make sure your kids didn't get in there, accidentally turn, you know, the balance all the way down to you know, right side or something like that. You know, all the obvious stuff, and I assume you know how to do that. So I did that, didn't work. So the next thing I thought I would check would be this loose connection idea. So here we are, down here. Yep. Okay, so the good thing about an MR2 Spyder is that the wiring is pretty easy to get to. It's exposed down here. I looked up the schematic, and I will show you the schematic, but I can tell you that right now that what it says is this connector right here. I've already unplugged this because it's aftermarket. This little adapter here came with it, and that's also suspect, of course. But by looking at the schematic, I saw that the green and the blue go to the speakers on the right side, and the pink and the purple go to the speakers on this side, on the left side, which was the side I was having trouble with. So what I first did was I just turned on the stereo, and I sort of moved these things around, and I tried to, you know, sort of pull on the wires a little bit. You don't have to be a gorilla here. When you're driving down the road, it's not being a gorilla, right? It's just vibrating a little bit. So I didn't see anything there. I kind of didn't think so, because you never get that lucky. But to test the rest of it, it's all up inside here or in the door, and that was not free because I would have to remove panels and stuff. But what was free is the next step, which is to take an ohm meter and ohm this out. Alright, if you don't know how to use one of these, then I hate to say it, but you probably shouldn't be doing your own work. This one's not really that complicated, though. You just put it on ohms and you test across the two wires. And if you look at the schematic, what you got are two 4-ohm speakers in parallel, which should give you 2 ohms of resistance. And what I did was I then saw the purple and the pink were across the second side right here, so I ohm out from here to here, and what I got was open loop. I can't show you that because I've already replaced it. However, I didn't get, so I wasn't 100% certain I'd get 2 ohms because these are component speakers. And when they're component speakers, I'll show you what I mean. It means I got a woofer and a tweeter separately, but the signal comes down one wire and they're shared, so each speaker gets the exact same signal. That means you're feeding high frequency sounds to a larger speaker, which is going to try and move really, really fast. But it's big and it's designed to be used to move a lot of volume more slowly to create a low frequency sound. So feeding that kind of signal into this will destroy it pretty quickly. Same thing goes with the tweeter the other way around. So what they do is they use a crossover when you have this kind of a design, and a crossover is basically just a filter that just gives the low frequency sounds to the low frequency speaker and the high frequency sounds to the high frequency speaker. There are many kinds of crossovers. You can go look them up online. I'm not going to go into all that. What I can say is that the ones that came on the Spyder were very simple. I think they were literally just a single capacitor and an inductor. So once you have reactance in the circuit like that, and you use an ohm meter, you may not get the 2 ohms that you expect. I didn't exactly know what to get, but fortunately I had a working speaker on that side of the car. So what I did then was I came down here and I ohmed out the green and the blue wire that go over there. And what I got was about, I think, 13 ohms. The point is, I saw something on one side, I didn't see something on the other. So even if you don't know what you're looking for, you can still do this test. I didn't believe the answer. I was convinced it was a head unit, and so I tested it many times and I just kept getting open loop. So I had to go more invasively. I mean, that right there told me, if I paid attention to what I was getting scientifically, that told me what I was getting was that I had a bad speaker or bad wiring in between. So now I had to go not free and remove the door panel to check out that wiring. So I'm going to show you how to do that right now. The good news is this is actually pretty simple. Again, the reason that I decided to make my own video was because the one guy I watched to remove the door panel kind of breezed over the most important difficult part to understand, and that's taking off this bezel. And the other guy actually broke it. So I wanted to show you in better detail what you're dealing with here so that you can, not break things. So good news is there are only 4 screws and 7 clips around here to pull this off. And because there's no window switches in here or anything, and that's important when you're pulling off a door panel generally, is that you've got some wires that are connect the door panel to the door itself, and you can, stretch those or break them or whatever. In this case, the MR2 doesn't even have any, so once you get to that point, you can just pull it off. So I'm going to go ahead and show you where all those things are right now, and I'm going to go real quick because there are videos online that are available for this. One thing I wanted to mention was that Toyota recommends wrapping your tools in like tape to help protect the plastics, and I think that's a really great idea. I'm not going to bother with it right now here. I do want to protect my panels, but what I found was I was able to get them off over there just fine without it, as long as you're just really careful. So the first screw is right here, and I'm going to get some shadow on that one because it's in the morning, so it comes off so easy that no damage to the plastic there. So I'm going to throw that down here in the car, try and keep all my stuff together. I'll probably find a way to step on it later. The second one is right behind here, and this is probably the most dangerous one because it's visible, and you could actually scratch your car here, but if you get it up underneath just enough, then just use your fingers, as I didn't do, and just pull it. There's no special directions or anything, just feel it if you're breaking it or not, and just pull it out. So once again, I don't feel like I did any significant damage there, which is nice. And the screw is right there. You don't need to remove this one. It all just stays together. You just need to get access to the screws. The next one is behind here. This piece is, in my car, it's really floppy. And there aren't any, there's really not a lot of prying that needs to go on there. The last one, I didn't even use a screwdriver, I don't think. I just kind of grabbed it and tried to get all my fingers on it, got my thumb up underneath there and just sort of pulled from bottom first, and then just sort of worked it off like that. No damage there. And there's a screw here, you cannot see it. Let's see if that helps. There's a screw right in here. that holds the door on. That's screw number 3. That brings us to screw number 4, the hard one, right here. Let me see if I can. I'm going to go ahead and sort of, if you will, put it back in the sun. There we go. Okay, so there's a little door right here. It's not a cover. It is, but it's designed like a door. So there's a hinge, and you can see Toyota's put a little gap right here to tell you which side to pull from. But the little hinge over here, if you break that, this will come off, and honestly, it will never stay on again. So just have to be a little bit careful with it. Just stick your screwdriver down in there. See, I prefer not to, doing it one-handed here, to scratch it too much. But you see, it just sort of stays open. And then inside there is a screw. This is your screwdriver. I'm going to pull these off now, and I'm not going to film it because you know how to do screws. Okay, the screws are out. I guess you can get a better view here, right? There we go. So the screws are out, and but you can't pull the door panel off yet because of this pesky little bezel here. I have the other one in my hand, and I'll show you what happens here. There's a clip here. Let me see if you can see that. There you go. Right down here on the bottom. And so that means it needs to slide this way, which is forward. Yeah, forward. But, and this is the important part, nobody shows very well. These guys here, let me see on the video, there we go. This guy right here has a hole in it. There's one on this side too. I just call them ears. Internal to the door, there are also 2 little ears that sort of stick up inside the hole like this. You have to pry these ears outward in order to pop them off of that. Otherwise, this bezel will break right across this line. And so it seems, if you look at this, there's not a lot of room here to get in there. It seems like you're not only going to do damage, but you also just can't get in there. But as it turns out, at least on the other side, these ears are not that deep. You don't have to pry very much before they pop off. And so what you kind of do is you stick it in there. I hope this works the way I'm saying it will. You kind of stick your screwdriver in there, and you pry and you pull with your hands, or you're pushing along with your hands, and just kind of work it off. You kind of got to do it by feel. Let's see how this goes. So it's not going as easily as the other side. And one of the problems I'm having is that my car came with aftermarket leather, and so when they do the leather on the doors, they literally just put it right over what was there, which makes it thicker, which means that this bezel is actually held in a little bit tighter. But I think on the other side what I had to do was push this and get that little hook out kind of first, but you can only go so far because those ears hold it in place. So I'm going to wrestle with this for a while, and you'll see what happens. Yeah. So it's right about here. I really hate doing this. There we go. So I really hate doing that because I've got a harsh screwdriver up against delicate plastic. But by sticking it in and kind of pulling out this way, I was able to get it to pop. It's kind of hard to see, but I actually did succeed there, right? So now I can kind of just, and sometimes you may have to manipulate this guy, right? But there's another one below it, and it's a little different than the other side. So what I'm going to do is just put in there and do the same thing. I believe I've just gotten it. There we go. And now it comes out. So, I did it. I didn't damage it. That's how you do it. You don't break it. You get these little ears. I hope that helps somebody, because that right there was enough. I didn't want to have to replace this. And I knew there had to be a method, and I just wasn't seeing it online. So I'm happy now that I was able to show you that. If it's not clear, put something in the comments, and they only sold 10,000 of these cars. I know there are only a few of you even looking at this video. They hardly exist on the road anymore, and those people who do have them probably don't do their own work, or they don't have a bad speaker. So it's going to appeal to about 10 people. But if I can even help one person do that right, I will have succeeded. So now there are 7 little clips that hold this in, and you just pull it straight out to undo those clips. It's going back in that's the hard part on that. And so I'll just show you. You can just do it with your hands. You can't really see. It's off camera here. There we go. My knee's in the way. But I'm just going to grab it underneath and just lever my fingers between the paint and the panel and pop it. And just go all the way around with it until I hear them all pop. Just be careful. And then the door panel is just hanging down. So and this is common on almost all cars actually, you lift up and the panel comes off. Alright, so I set that somewhere where I can run over it with the car later. And here we have the stock setup, the stock speakers and the wiring. I'm not going to do any diagnosis here because I know these speakers are actually good. They won't be when I get done with them, because when I took this speaker out on the other side last time, in order to replace it, I pretty well destroyed it. And I think that's going to happen here, because this cone, so you can see the voice coil move, how it moves in and out, right? It's kind of glued into this housing, and so to get it out I was ripping it to shreds, and it's a shame because I like to keep speakers like this. I actually converted a pair of speakers like this into a home theater speaker system, outdoor home theater, and I needed some speakers, and I just used repurposed some old car speakers, so it's a shame to throw away things that are in good condition. But this brings me to the continuation of the diagnosis process. So what I did was I had the stereo on. I'd already wiggled it down there, put the stereo on again, plugged it back in, and then I just kind of moved these wires around. I tugged on them a little bit again. I tried to see if there was a loose connection, and there wasn't. So then what I did is I pulled it, I disconnected here. That's a little bit difficult. There we go. And I put the ohmmeter on here, and I still measured open loop. And I have to admit I did not put it on both ends of this wire, and that was an oversight on my part, because just because you have a bad speaker doesn't mean you also don't have a bad connection, right? So it's a good idea I felt that once I'd gotten open loop on the speaker, I knew it was the speaker, even though I measured it a dozen times because I didn't believe it. I probably should have put it on both this end and that end to make sure that I also didn't have an open on my wire. So you do that. I won't, because I know this one's good. I don't even have to. So I'm just going to disconnect the 2 speakers, and then I'm going to pull it out. I can pull this one out from here. If I can, I'd always like to use a socket over a screwdriver any day. It's just got a little tab on that side, comes right out. What I like to do is put the screws back where I got them. That way, not only do I know where they go, but I know where they are. I don't remember where this one was. There it is. Or you can, you can feed them to your kids, whatever works. I think this one went here. So they've kind of glued this in a little, and I found it difficult to get out. There it goes. There it is. I kind of filmed a lot of this stuff earlier. and I'm not sure, I don't remember exactly what I did and didn't film, but one of the things I want to note is that this is a 20 watt speaker. The output of my head unit is 20 watts. Could be when the top's down and I'm on the interstate, I do turn the volume up pretty high. I really kind of wish I had an amplifier, and now I will have some better speakers so I can amplify those. And so hopefully that may be the cause of what happened. I don't think I ever really maxed everything out, and 20 watt output on a radio is kind of subjective anyway, but I don't know, it's a 15-year-old car, maybe it's just time for the speakers to go. But what I don't like is that the speaker is integral to this plastic. It's just been molded all together. I don't know why they can't just buy a speaker with a regular 4-hole pattern and put it in the door. I don't know why they have to do this kind of thing, but that's life, that's the way it is. So you have two choices. You can get a regular speaker, drill your door and put it in there, assuming it fits, make your own adapter, or in my case, I'm going to adapt my speaker to this housing, and I'm going to do it in such a way that if I ever want to buy new speakers and they have a common 4-hole pattern around the outside, I should be able to drop it right in from this point forward. Speakers last a long time. I don't ever foresee needing to do this, but if so, that'll work. So that's how you get the door panel out. That's how I diagnosed my problem, and now I'm going to show you how I fixed it. Okay, so I'd like to apologize for both the condition of my car and the condition of the room and the desktop in which I'm working. I got some trauma going on in my life right now, and so everything's kind of in a mess. Unfortunately, I drive to work every single day. I listen to music, I listen to books on audio, I listen to news, I listen to a lot of things. I really enjoy that, and I just can't stand, I prioritize this. I just can't stand not having my speakers working. So the first thing, having done this already, first thing I know I need to do is I'm going to remove this little ring around the outside, and there's kind of almost no gentle way to do it. It's going to rip. You just stick the screwdriver between between this cardboard and the plastic, and then you just pry it up and just pull it off. One thing I noticed last time I did this, one thing I noticed was that this ring fits nicely around that surround, but on the new speakers it does not. So this piece will be missing, and hopefully that won't cause an issue. Alright, so as you can see, there's still some residual left there, and the problem with this is pretty much messes up the speaker, because see how that's attached to the rubber surround? So the speaker is essentially toast, courtesy of this bizarre design that they use. Alright, once you get that out, I wouldn't expect any miracles. It's still held in by all these plastic ribs. The other guy had on the internet who did this, had a special tool you could get down in there. It's really cool. I gotta get one of those. But the best tool I have for it right now is a Dremel tool, which, well, it's not the greatest, but it'll get it out. So before I do that, what I want to do, I'll show you this here, is right here, there are two connections soldered between this connector. Oh, it's interesting, this connector doesn't appear to have glue on it like the other one did. Anyway, this connector is soldered to this little white clip here, and I want to reuse this connector. The guy online cut these, and he kind of botched it up a bit, so I'm going to desolder them. But having done the other one, I can tell you that what happens is it's a kind of a hand-in-hand sort of thing. One is a blade, and the other is sort of a cup like this. So when you desolder, you need to slide it this way out, not down as I did the previous time, which bends that open. Although I'm not sure it really matters either way. I'm going to give it a try again this time and see how it goes. It was not easy. You gotta try not to breathe that solder stuff in, it's not good for you. Okay, I don't know if you can see that or not. but I'll just show you. The two going down from this white pop backward, and I sort of push these two down a little bit just to separate the two. So now these two are not tied together anymore. In fact, this is a little clip, and if you take it, you can go like that and push it down. Okay, it was still a little soldered. There you go. So this can actually come off and move around and stuff, but now I'm going to cut all these ribs and pull it out. Okay, I've cut all the ribs out, but I cut them in such a way that I can't push it forward because they just catch on the ribs. So what you do is you lift up, and then you rotate, and you go like this, and voila, wasted speaker. Perfectly good, messed up speaker. If you're wise, you'll throw this away. But if you're like me, you're going to keep that because it's got a cool magnet on it. Don't do like me. Okay, this is the new speaker. It's a Rockford Fosgate Punch P165SI. I'm not paid by them. I don't know anything about them. I don't know if these are good speakers. I won't know until I use them for a while. Yada yada yada. What I do know is that they are 6.5. I thought they might be 6 3/4 because the ring that came with the that was on the stock Toyota speaker doesn't fit inside. It's hard to tell maybe, but it fits on top of the cushion or whatever they call that thing. That's not going to work. That consequently means that this won't seal. You can see a line where it was sealing up against the door panel, sealing that in nicely. I won't have anything to do that. What I intend to do is ignore it. I'm just going to bolt this in, see if the panel rattles or something. I'll have to do something about it, but I won't know until I get that in, and I'll worry about it at that point. I think these speakers are a little bit different than most speakers. I think a lot of speakers only have 4 holes diametrically opposed. This one gives you a lot of mounting options with these slots in them, so you can get the speaker exactly right. Nobody's going to see this, so I really don't care about looks so much. But what I do care about is lining up the connections with what do I do with it? Here. With this connector. So originally, what I planned to do is put the speaker in, and then attach these to these. Sorry, you may not be able to see that. These to these. A couple problems involved with that. One, there's a second set up here. So apparently the crossovers I discussed earlier are all in the cage of the big speaker, and it goes out. You'll recall on the Toyota, it split at the door and went in 2 different directions. Now I have to have a way to get the wires from inside this housing to the tweeter. The other problem with this is, so in other words, I'm going to need to cut another hole in here anyway to get things through. It's not going to be just this connector. The other problem is that these are actually across from each other. They're also too far apart, so I can't just sort of bend this down and solder it to it. It's just not going to reach. So I'm going to have to make a little bridge to come across these and cross over each other. What I did on the last speaker, I'm going to repeat on this speaker. I'm going to get a little spade connector like this guy who fits on here. I don't want to press it on too hard, it's hard to get off. Thusly, and then I'm going to solder to this end. That way, if I ever want to remove this speaker, all I have to do is unplug it and pull it out with the 4 screws, of course. So I'm going to make a little wire that goes from here to here. I'll give it a little extra length so that I can pull it out and then unplug it. Alright, so there are my 2 cables. I couldn't use the one with the little fancy shield on it. It didn't fit over the insulation. So I just made 2 like that. I'm sure it'll be just fine. I'm going to solder the other ends in and keep going. Okay, just a little hint. Toyota's connectors are always labeled kind of like a book, left to right, 1, 2, 3, 4. And then if you have a second row, 5, 6, 7, 8, kind of comes back again, just like you'd read a book. On the female connector, the connector is determined, the sex of the connector is determined by the pins. So even though the other connector plugs into this one, it's not the male. This is the male because the pins are here. So that means on the female, pin 1, going left to right, facing me, not you, would be 1, 2. So that would be this finger here. So when I plug it in this way, it would be on the other side, be on the right side. Or in your side, the left, I guess, because, yeah, whatever. It's this one over here. So it's that one right there is the plus. Alright, I'm in the kitchen now because I like to use every room in the house when I do work. And what I'm going to do is take some of this 5-minute epoxy. Actually, technically it says 6 minutes. But even 5-minute epoxy takes about 4 hours to cure. So doing the speakers in the way that I'm doing them is not going to be fast. I'm just going to describe what I'm doing here. These pockets, if they were solid, I could just drill into it and put the speaker on and be done, which would be really nice. But instead they chose to make these pockets out of it. So if I drill down, I'm going to go through this flange, and that is here, which as you can see is the rubber seal against the door, which means I would be going into the door. Now the guy on the previous video, the guy on the video who also did this, that's what he chose to do. Made it simple and easy, but he had to cut into the metal of his door. After he did that, I didn't see anyway, him apply any kind of paint to the door. And I don't like drilling into raw sheet metal and leaving exposed edges. I live in Florida, and things do rust pretty quickly here. Not as quickly as up north where you have a lot of salt on the roads, but it's not Arizona. And I don't like leaving edges like that. And frankly, I didn't see that as a great of a long-term solution. If I made this something that could be always altered and just put it back in normal, I thought that might be a better way to go. So I started coming up with ideas where I'd have like maybe a little L bracket that was screwed in from the side, came up and over the top and captured the speaker. But the problem with that is the diaphragm here, this rubber diaphragm, if I had an L bracket come in this way, it gets close to that, and I didn't want it to interfere and cut it or something of that nature. So instead I decided to just fill this area with epoxy and drill into it. I think that's a pretty good way to do it. So I'm going to use this 5-minute epoxy that I've already described, and I'm only going to mix enough for like 1 or 2 pockets because it lights off really quickly, and I'm afraid I won't get them all filled if I do try and do all 4. I've already put the speaker in and marked along the side here, right here. Actually, I marked on the flange because how I'm doing this is I'm actually going to wind up using the slots in the speaker to mount it. But I think most speakers use 4 holes like this. Given the fact that I have slots, I could actually put on one side of the speaker, I could put a screw here, and on the other side of the speaker I might be a little bit over there. So even though I'm using 4 slots, I'm afraid they won't be diametrically opposed, and if I get another speaker that doesn't have slots, they won't fit in. So instead what I'm going to use is these holes. So I've marked roughly where I want to go. I'm going to line up the smaller holes, drill, that way I know all my holes are exactly diametrically opposed, and then I can just rotate this and use the slots. And the reason I'm using the slot is I need to line up this connector with that connector, and the single holes line up on these ribs inside these pockets, and then it'd be hard to drill there. So it's just one of those things. It's just a victim of circumstance, I guess. So I'm going to go ahead and fill all these with epoxy, build them up, and then during the 4 hours I'm waiting for that to cure, I'll probably make this video, or at least most of it. Alright, so now I'm going to concentrate on the tweeter. There's a single screw holding it on in the back. So just take that out. And then they put some goop on it. You can see some of it there, but there's more in between these two. They don't want to come apart very easily. I think this is to keep this plate from vibrating against this against the speaker. So you just have to kind of, if you stick a screwdriver in there, pry it apart, maybe poke yourself in the finger, go to the ER. Yeah, like that. Huh. What do you know? I actually did do it. Anyway, then you have to cut away this little guy here. Just holding it on. And then pull. This connector comes off by sticking something under there. Maybe I can poke myself again. Finally. And the new speaker. Oh, brother. Hang on. Gave me a chance to use my Star Wars sticker. This is Stormtrooper. Probably lose the finger. Alright. Here's how this one goes. And this one is, of course, problematic as well because this speaker also has a small screw in the bottom. Unfortunately, it's not the same size as the one that came off. And I don't have any of those, so what I wound up having to do was, or what I will wind up having to do is to cut a longer one that fits on there. The problem also is putting it on here because as I slide this forward, it bumps up against these wires before it even matches the hole. I don't think that's a good long-term solution because these edges are kind of sharp. So to help with the vibration, I'm going to put this piece of tape on. Don't know if it... I don't think it needs to last because it's going to be trapped between the speaker and this bracket. Just punch a little hole here for it. And I can put on the speaker. Use my freshly cut screw. Hopefully that fits in. Alright, to strain relief these wires, because they're right up against this sort of kind of sharp edge here, I just put a lot of hot glue around there. Just gooped it all over the place to hold it in place. And I also do the same thing where the tweeter power wires go through the hole in the side there. Okay, so this is something else I think some of the guys missed online was you should test the system before you put the panel back on, otherwise you just got to take it off again if it doesn't work. So I've connected everything up. I've used this connector. I think I'm going to put in the video that I got it wrong when I said that those were crossed. I went back and looked at the schematic, and I think it's just kind of hard to tell because when they number the pins, they use this little connector at the top to orient it, and this connector is on the side over here, and there's a little connector on the top on this one, so I got a little confused. So I had to reverse them. They go straight across, and I went over to the other speaker and corrected that too. I think if they're both backwards, it's not a big deal because they'll be in phase. They won't be out of phase. But I went ahead and did it the right way. I've only just done this temporarily for right now, but I've also put the original connector back on just to hold everything in place, and just in case I ever want to use this again somehow. And what I did was I put, it's kind of hard to tell, but right there I put two little pieces of yellow heat shrink on there so they won't short out or anything because they just go nowhere. And then I used the original location here to put a little zip tie on to secure both the wires for the tweeter and the old wires, and I just put some of that blue tape on just to give it a little extra cushion there. So now I'm going to start it up. There's a chance that whatever comes on might be copyrighted and it might get picked up by YouTube. If that happens, then I'll just repost the video and remove that, I guess. I don't really know how that stuff works, so let me give it a try now and see what happens. Okay, definitely something coming out of there. Definitely something coming out of there. We'll try the other side. Definitely something coming out here. And something coming out here. So I would call that a success. Now all I have to do is get these wires secured in a good position and put the panels back on. And listen for noises. And if it's okay, I'll be done. So if nothing happens, this will be the end of the video. I apologize for the length. I don't like long videos. I wanted to keep it short, but I think there was a lot to cover. I hope it helps somebody. Yeah, that's it. Thanks for listening.